Hello my friends, Sean Ferrick here for Trek Culture, and today's video is brought to you by Star Trek Fleet Command. Hooray! More on that now in a second. Listen, you don't want to think of being a Starfleet officer as a job that anyone could just apply for. You kind of want it to be a bit of a specialised thing. So maybe if you want to keep thinking that way, don't watch this list. With that in mind, I'm Sean Ferrick, I'm here for Trek Culture, and here are the 10 dumbest decisions by Starfleet officers. Number 10, deactivating RIPPER'S force field. Ellen Landry. I mean, we're not starting off strong here. Look, for the record, Rekha Sharma, love her. Thought she was brilliant, loved her in Battlestar Galactica. She's brilliant. Completely and utterly wasted in Star Trek Discovery, but more than that, really given some questionable things to do. Ripper is of course the tardigrade who effectively spores the ship. Like, it's through Ripper that we learn about the fantastic propulsion system that no one ever told Janeway and Voyager about. You know, it's a pretty important tardigrade. It's also really dangerous. I mean, we see it rip a Klingon officer to pieces just in front of the rest of the crew aboard the USS Glenn. Like, let's not muck about with this thing. They're trying to get it to cooperate, and Burnham and Landry are in the lab with Ripper in the force field cage. To get it to cooperate, Landry decides she's going to take down the force field and go after it with a knife and a gun, and it goes about as well as you'd expect. I personally was quite surprised when Rekha Sharma's character was killed off so early into Star Trek Discovery. I thought, oh great, you know, here she is, a fairly major sci-fi. Okay, she's dead now. All right, okay. So you can imagine my excitement when they brought her back then for Discovery Season 3. She was in the Mirror Universe. No, she's dead again. We'll get there, lads. We'll get there. Hey everybody, before we get started, I want to take this opportunity to thank Star Trek Fleet Command for partnering with us here on Trek Culture. Fleet Command is a strategic MMO, free-to-play, mobile, open-world game that is available on iOS and Android. You can grab a copy by following the link below this video. This is an awesome game that lets you build your own story, lets you send your team on away missions, lets you track your own progress with monthly updates and rewards to keep you engaged. It lets you build your own crew by assembling famous officers. We've got Kirk, we've got Spock, we've got Picard, we've got Worf. You can build your reputation among the fleet so that people will be absolutely bricking it when they see you. You can also build your own craft based on some of the famous ones from the past, and also build your own base. You can send your crews off to research and explore, and remember, my favorite part of the game is the fact that when you're operating in the neutral zone, you are a freelancer. You can do whatever you want, whenever you want. What's that? I have vastly misunderstood what a freelancer is. Yes, boss, I'm on my way. Check it out by following the link in the description below this video. Once again, thank you so much to Star Trek Fleet Command for partnering with us here over on Trek Culture. Now, back to the video. Number 9, holding a summit at Starfleet headquarters with a terrorist on the loose, Admiral Alexander Marcus. This one could be pointed at quite a few people, really. Apparently it was protocol that if there was a mass issue or, you know, terrorist attack, anything like that, that a meeting would be held with Starfleet's top brass at HQ in San Francisco. HQ is a high-rise skyscraper covered in windows. Anyone with security knowledge of Starfleet is going to know that setting off a bomb attack like that in a Starfleet facility is going to result in all of these people being in the same room at the same time. I thought for a long time that maybe this was Alexander Marcus just finding a way to, you know, get rid of some of the competition and using the fact that he knows John Harrison will attack this meeting as his way of doing that, because obviously he survives, whereas Admiral Pike doesn't. But then what actually throws that into a bit of a loop is an interview with Peter Weller in which he says he didn't think of Admiral Marcus as a traditional bad guy. He thought of him as someone who was purely dedicated to the work he was doing, but also he was, you know, he was still looking out for Starfleet. Probably wasn't about to assassinate all of Starfleet's top brass then, especially when some of them may have listened to him. So really, this was a forgot about the Iron Fleet kind of moment. Number 8, living life a little dangerously, Engineer Olsen. This is a clear and obvious gag for the fans. This was really enjoyable, and there was no one who I was with in the cinema that day who didn't break their hearts laughing at this point. So Engineer Olsen is given the charges that they need to destroy the Romulan mining drill aboard the planet Vulcan. Because of the proximity to the Narada, the Enterprise's transporters aren't working. So Pike gets a great idea of, we'll send 3 people down to skydive with military training, and we'll take out the Romulans that way. All good so far. Except they didn't check the psychological profile of everyone they were sending down. Engineer Olsen is an absolute adrenaline junkie. He completely fails to pull the cord for his chute, going straight past Kirk and Sulu. When he does, it's far too late. He completely flips around and gets sucked into the mining drill, vaporized on impact. And what do the 2 men above him say? Ugh, he had the charges. I mean, lads, he was wearing red. What were we expecting? Number 7, violating the neutral zone, Commodore Stalker. Now, while this is an incredibly dumb decision, and we'll get to that in a second, Stalker gets a little bit of sympathy for this entry. In the episode The Deadly Years of the original series, Kirk, Spock, and much of the rest of the crew begin to be affected by a disease that begins to make them age rapidly. That's a little bit of a flip to the counterclock incident of the animated series. This means then that Kirk can't be trusted to run the ship. The next highest officer would have been Spock, but of course he's in the same position. They're transporting Commodore Stalker, so he steps in. There's nothing wrong with that. A Commodore is higher than a captain, so should be absolutely fine, right? Well, there does seem to be an ongoing trend in Star Trek that once you're promoted past captain, you become a bit of an idiot. And Stalker, it's his inexperience that really lets him down here. What he wants to do is he wants to get the crew to a starbase as quickly as possible. Now, as quickly as possible means the shortest physical distance, which takes them through the Romulan neutral zone. He's not thinking about that because, as Kirk later on says, he has spent his entire career behind a desk. He's sort of a Commodore of admin, as opposed to one who's had experience in the field. Now, although he's warned against it, he overrides those warnings, takes the ship into the neutral zone, and it's immediately fired upon by Romulan birds of prey. So it was a dumb decision. Like, he should have had the basic knowledge not to enter the neutral zone, but he shouldn't have been in the position of commanding the ship to begin with. So we'll let you have this one, Stalker, but that's it, alright? That's it. Number 6, ignoring the KROWTONAN guard's warning, Captain Rudy Ransom. Now, this is one of the more tragic, dumb decisions on this list because it had an immediate, devastating impact on the ship. When the USS Equinox was zapped into the Delta Quadrant by the caretaker, Rudy Ransom was in charge and was now faced, like Janeway, with the prospect of having to get his crew home. Unlike Janeway, he effectively turned left when he should have turned right. Janeway met the Ocampa and then met some more friendly races. They ran in to the KROWTONAN guard. Now, this was a very volatile area of space that was being, there was civil war, interwar, it was a bad place. You don't want to go there. It's like running through an army testing site. Maybe just don't. The Equinox was warned, stay out of this area of the space. Ransom, desperate to get his crew home as quickly as possible, said, nope, we're gonna go on. Over the course of the next week, constant attacks from the KROWTONAN guard resulted in 39 members of the Equinox crew being killed. That was half of the crew complement. Now, they never recovered from that, and it put their already dangerous position into desperate. That indirectly led to the entire events of the episodes Equinox and Equinox Part 2, the murder of several of those nucleogenic life forms, and of course Janeway's campaign to hunt down Ransom. Really, while there's very little defending his actions, it was just pure desperation taking over all forms of training with awful consequences. Number 5, not running a diagnostic on the Enterprise computer, Commodore Stone and Starfleet. Now we get another Commodore here because they don't get a really good reputation in Star Trek, particularly in the original series where they were most frequently showing. Captain Kirk is being court-martialed for the death of Ben Finney, who was an officer under him, but someone with whom he previously served on the USS Intrepid. The Enterprise encountered an ion storm, and Finney was in an ion pod that was aboard the Enterprise. As you know, as it was standard, you jettisoned these pods when hitting a storm. So Kirk signaled the warning, get out the pod. Benny failed to do so. Get out the pod, Benny. He failed to do so. Kirk jettisoned the pod. He gave him warning. During the court-martial, the Enterprise's own recordings of this show Kirk skipping the warnings and just jettisoning the pod. That puts Kirk up on a murder charge. Kirk is obviously confused because he's adamant. He knows what he did. He knows the order in which events happened, and that couldn't have been correct. It comes down to Spock to realize that something's not right with the Enterprise computer. He had programmed it to play 3D chess, and it consistently began losing against him, which to him realized, hang on, there must be something wrong with that because it should have at least my skills of chess. And sure enough, it leads to the reveal of the fact that Ben Finney is still alive and was framing Kirk for his own murder due to a perceived slight in the past where Finney was passed over for promotion because Kirk logged a report. Wouldn't it be kind of standard procedure that in a courtroom drama, you would want to know that the images you're looking at are real? All right, yes, we're going to hang a man's freedom on this. You checked that computer, right? It's all good. Oh, yeah, sure. Number 4, interfering with the VISSIAN COGENITOR, Charles Tucker. Another tragic, dumb decision here, and again, one that came from a good place, was when Trip began to show the cogenitor of the VISSIAN couple that they had encountered that there was another way to live, that there was another way to be. The cogenitors in VISSIAN society were very much second-class citizens. They pretty much existed just to help a couple have a baby because this was a 3-gender society. This cogenitor and Trip become friendly. The cogenitor chooses the name Charles to have their own identity. And when it comes time to go back to the VISSIAN ship, they ask for asylum. Now this puts Archer in a pretty tough spot because he has to deny the asylum because it threatens a newfound friendship with the VISSIAN people who there is mutual benefits to being friends with here. When the cogenitor goes back to the ship, they signal Archer to let them know the cogenitor kills themselves now that they've seen something else. We're not damning Trip for trying to teach the cogenitor that there was another way to live. Really, it's the assumption that every society operates on the same way that 23rd or 22nd century Earth operated. And that is what Archer really tries to hammer home to him at the end of the episode. It's that because of Trip's very well-intentioned arrogance, a life has been lost, and the couple with whom the cogenitor was living will now be a long time waiting until they have children. And whether one believes it's right or wrong the way the cogenitors exist in VISSIAN society, the interference with other cultures cannot be condoned, hence the eventual founding of the Prime Directive. Number 3, beaming the entire crew down to a planet with a planet killer nearby, Commodore Matt Decker. You've got to feel a little bit sorry for Decker here. I mean, he's probably one of the most ridiculed officers in all of Starfleet, which is saying something. He was supposed to be a very well respected, very highly decorated commander. If you think about when Saru was looking at some of the best commanders in Starfleet, Matt Decker's name comes up. Kirk and Spock held him in high regard as well. No one could really have prepared him for coming across the planet killer that, kicked the crap out of his ship. The USS Constellation was another Constitution class ship that came across this giant worm in space that was basically snacking on star systems for its next source of food. They tried to engage it, and unsurprisingly in hindsight, the ship was absolutely no match for the planet killer, which effectively decimated the ship. To save his crew, Decker said he would transport them off the vessel onto a planet with a planet killer beside it. The only thing that Decker didn't do was serve a glass of wine with the meal he provided to that planet killer. Look, he more than made up for his mistake with his life. You know, he flew his little shuttle in, which inspired Kirk to fly the Constellation into the ship, which did shut it down. So props for that, but Decker, did you not see that one coming now, in fairness? Number 2, not saving the child, William T. Riker. In the first season episode of The Next Generation, Hyde and Q, the eponymous Q returns again and begins to put the Enterprise crew through another one of his fun games. But this one comes with a twist. He's not just there to cause havoc, he's actually there to offer Riker the potential to become Q. He immediately gives the powers to Riker, who manages to save Wesley and Worf's lives in this imagined scenario that Q has created. So far, so good. Riker and Picard then have a chat about the use of these new powers. And effectively, Riker is promising Picard, look, I won't use them. We'll learn, we'll understand, I won't use them, be grand. They then get to a colony that has undergone a horrific accident. 500 colonists' lives are at risk. Geordi and Data remove a bunch of rubble to find a critically injured young girl buried there. A click of his fingers and he would have restored that girl to life. However, because he had a pinky promise with Picard, he lets her die. Now, he's very unhappy about it. He's certainly not fine with this decision, nor clearly are Crusher and even Data. But it's baffling how he kept to the promise for this decision. You know, this is when it comes to saving lives, Wesley and Worf find to save their lives. Think of redemption. Think of Data talking to Picard at the end of the episode, and he says, I must be disciplined for my actions. Picard says, we do not want officers who will blindly follow orders. Case in point, Hyde and Q, a little girl dies because Riker made a promise. Number 1. Lieutenant Joe Tormolen takes off his gloves. You idiot, Joe. Joe, you idiot. Yeah, I know you died in the episode. I don't have any sympathy for you. What the hell were you doing, Joe? Spock and Lieutenant Tormolen beam down to the surface of Psi 2000 because they've lost contact with a colony that... No, really, Joe, what were you doing? Sorry. They beam down in environmental suits because they realise they shouldn't be just breathing in the air or touching everything. Spock is able to follow this rule pretty easily, but Lieutenant Joe, oh no, not wildcard Tormolen. No, he decides that he has to rub his nose, but, you know, take his glove off for that, and then have a little bit of a feel around everything. Shockingly, Joe Tormolen is infected with the Psi 2000 virus. Nice one, Joe. The man comes back up to the ship and of course begins infecting everyone. Now, he ends up with a butter knife in his gut. Yes, I'm sorry, Joe. I'm sorry that this mission left you dead. But if you had just left your glove on, this was not a difficult thing to do. And I'm sorry, Joe, but that puts you at the very top of the list of the dumbest decisions that have been made by Starfleet officers. I mean, what the hell, Joe? That's everything for our list today. If you think there was any other thick-ass decisions out there, please drop me into the comments below. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can catch us over on Twitter at Trek Culture, or you can catch myself at Sean Ferrick on Twitter as well. Whatever you do, try do it in such a way that you won't end up on one of these lists, okay? And live long and prosper.